dirt road off a 2-lane past a shot up county sign. Squeaking of a backyard screen door letting you know that it's
The Putnam Personalities podcast exists to highlight the good, the positive, and the inspirational in our community. This episode is not an endorsement of any political or religious ideology. This podcast is a simple interview to get to know our friends, neighbors, leaders, and colleagues on a more personal level. Sit back, grab some sweet tea, and enjoy today's interview.
like home to me.
So I've got Amanda Frame on the podcast today, and I always tell our guests, you don't have to look at the screen. It's kind of like sitting in a coffee shop and basically eavesdropping on someone's conversation.
That's fine.
Have you ever done that before?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and like I think I said this on my last one, but the hard thing is for me not to butt in and say something, because I'll hear something they'll say, I'm like, oh, do you know? And they're like, uh-oh, you kind of give it away. But anyway, so this podcast is basically to highlight the good, the inspirational, and all that stuff in our community. And I've got you on here. I've known you since I moved here. In fact, I think it was 2013, our family moved here, and you had moved here, I guess, shortly before that. Mm-hmm. You and Robert got married. When did y'all get married?
So we got married in 2010, September.
Okay.
So yeah, I moved to Florida in December of 2009.
Oh, okay. Well, how'd you guys meet?
Some mutual friends from the evangelist family that traveled around. They were filling in here, actually, as the interim pastor while this church was looking for a pastor. Our families were very good friends, had been for about 14 years. And when my dad found out that he was having some medical troubles, then we came down to help out with the church and see whatever we could help with. And Robert's family had been friends with him as well for about the same amount of time, going to a different church though. And so when we came down, we met, and that was in 2007, November of 2007. We made a lot of trips back and forth between then, and then in 2009 we moved down here. January 1st, 2010 we got engaged, and in September we got married. So
Nice.
Yeah.
And you guys have 3 children now,
Mhm.
and your oldest is how old?
She's 12. She'll be 13 in September.
So she's not quite in a teen group yet, huh?
Not quite. She thinks she is, but
Yeah.
not quite.
She's very mature,
Mhm.
but I think that has to do with probably her upbringing as well.
Probably, yeah.
And that's something we're going to talk about here in a little bit as well. So you have been in Putnam County, so that's how many years now? 15 years?
Yeah, something
Almost
like
15
that.
years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Robert is actually, I've been here about 14, 15 years. Robert is actually, as far as he can trace it back, about a 7th generation Putnam County born and raised.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, I've seen pictures of him in old yearbooks and his sister, and they went to the school we had at our church years ago. We don't have the school anymore. We still have people calling asking for records, but when we first came here, I sent all those records to the school. I'm like, here, you guys take care of this. I don't want to mess with all this. But anyway, it used to be called Hollister Christian Academy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah,
but anyway.
Alyssa actually wears Robert's HCA jacket.
Really?
I think she finally outgrew it, but
Really?
he had his jacket, and she found it, and she wore that everywhere, even throughout the summer while it still fit her. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's really neat. So I met your family, like our very first couple weeks here. We stayed in a little building on property, and I woke up in the morning. I was getting ready for church that Sunday morning. I hear all this commotion. I look outside, and I think I'm wearing like probably slippers and bedclothes. I look outside like, can I help y'all? And it was your father-in-law. They were, I guess, unloading tables. They had borrowed tables from the church.
Yeah.
So that's how I first met him. And of course, Bobby your father-in-law has become a really good friend of mine. And we've seen a lot over the years with your family. I know your stepmom battled cancer for a while. Your mother-in-law battled cancer. We've been through that with her. We've seen your kids grow up. And then your second child, your boy, he had some impairments for a while too, didn't he?
Yeah, so Carson has some learning struggles and some things going on as well. He had some medical injuries when he was very young, and that resulted in some pretty severe hearing damage. He ended up in speech therapy for almost 3 years, basically relearning how to talk.
Oh wow.
Because he didn't start until he was almost 3.
Okay.
So that helped. Speech therapy made the world of difference for him.
Good.
And he's doing great. So.
Yeah, we as parents had the same situation. Our oldest daughter had some issues with her speech as well. So we know how it is to try to get them to read the books and and then not understanding at first that even while she was in kindergarten is when she actually, we found out after kindergarten that she had partial hearing loss, and we didn't know that. And so everything she had learned with reading and talking was all done through partially deaf ears. So it was like the whole relearning again.
Yeah, that was the same way with Carson. We found out that his hearing was pretty much, it was all very muffled, and he had so much pressure that he was in constant pain. It got to the point where I wouldn't go anywhere with him. I wouldn't take him to the stores or anything because it was just constant screaming, and we didn't know why. Figured it was a discipline issue, but we didn't know what else to do. And once we got the results of that hearing test, it just all was like a light bulb.
It made sense.
We were able to do some things, a lot of prayer. We used some different things that were able to clear up the chronic, well, we have been told were chronic ear infections that caused the hearing damage that medicines weren't touching. And he has passed every hearing test since then. Good. He has some scar tissue from that, but it doesn't seem to affect his hearing now. So
that's really neat.
Lord.
We were in California a couple weeks ago, and my daughter was also born with a cloud of cornea, and now she's in her 20s, and she had, at 3 months old, she had a cornea transplant. And I wanted so bad to go, and I found the doctor that did it. He's still there. I don't know if he's probably on an advisory board now, because he was old back then. I'm like, I don't know how old he is now, but it was part of my trip. I want to go by and have them meet, and I didn't have a chance to do that. But it's interesting though, watching our kids grow up with the struggles. And I wanted to bring that up because a lot of times I'm very, I don't know the right words to say, but I get real frustrated in a restaurant when kids are acting up and running around and screaming or just crying. It's like, can you get that kid quiet? And sometimes it is disciplinary issues with parents sitting on their phone playing, they could care less. There's obviously a bigger, deeper problem. But we also have to realize sometimes there are legitimate reasons, like in your case, kids cranky all the time. It may not be because mom and dad don't know how to handle him. It could be something else going on internally.
An underlying issue.
Just a word to the wise to be gracious with people through their situations. So even when it comes to someone that has, I know there's a lot of times I have to speak louder, and because those around me at times may have hard hearing, and so we just got to be aware of those things. And you homeschool your children, and I've always noticed this. Not that all homeschoolers are this way, and not that it's across the board, but homeschoolers sometimes seem like they progress quicker than maybe other people in school. They learn faster.
They can.
So why do you think that is?
So I personally know some that they're not super great at progressing. I've known different ones through the years. My kids are actually second generation homeschoolers. Okay. Robert and his sister came here for a few years, but that was in the early grades, but for the most part throughout middle school, high school, they were homeschooled as well. Myself and my brothers were homeschooled all the way. So homeschooling is literally the only thing that I know. I don't know anything different. It really depends on the family and how they view homeschooling, and if it's something that the parents view as important, then they'll put an importance on that, and then the kids will see that. And yes, like anything the kids don't like, they're going to have to be told to do that. But then as they see themselves learning and developing these good study habits and good skills, then they're like, oh, okay, mom and dad do have the right idea. Maybe they're right. I do need to apply myself. If they apply themselves, then they learn great. They can progress at their own pace because they're not being held back and having to wait on the rest of the class. When you have 20 or 22 kids, I don't know how big the classrooms are nowadays, but typically from what I'm hearing, it's at least 18 and above. Right. And when you have that many kids with one teacher, they can't give them that one-on-one attention that they need. And so then this kid that really needs help with spelling can't get it. And so if it doesn't get help that day, then the next day, then the next day, and it's just, they're just
Right.
falling further and further behind.
And sometimes it's not the school's fault.
Right, exactly.
Sometimes it's not a
Yeah.
teacher's fault.
Yes.
Even though they get
Exactly.
graded on those things.
Right.
But sometimes it's.
Yeah, I'm not downing,
Oh,
not
of
downing,
course.
downing
No,
public
of course not.
education,
I
but
know,
just,
of course not.
explaining the difference
Yeah, of
in
course.
how homeschoolers
Yeah.
and why they can progress quicker,
Yeah.
or seem to progress quicker than someone in a public school, or even in a private or even a Christian school, because
Right.
there's a one-on-one intention. They can focus, they can move at their own pace. If they really grasp this idea, great, let them fly through it, instead of having them, they have to
Right.
wait for the whole class to get it, to move on to the next lesson, so.
See,
That's the
and
main
I
reason.
think parenting is the main important
Mhm.
solution in the equation, or of the equation, because you hear all Tim Hawkins, Christian comedian, and he'll joke, he has a song about homeschoolers, and
Oh, yeah.
people joke, and it's okay,
Yeah.
they're funny,
Right.
and I've heard homeschoolers
Mhm.
say the same thing, and their mom is their teacher, their principal, their parent, it's everything.
Yep.
So all these jokes, but with that aside, there's questions like, well, how do your kids, how can they get acclimated in the community? They're not around other people, and they're gonna be social, blah, blah, blah.
Socialization,
That's
yeah,
like,
that's a big question.
my kids are homeschooled, for a
Mhm.
while, and my kids have done pretty well.
Yeah.
In fact, the one that went to school is the one that's probably the most antisocial, believe it or not.
Yeah,
But it falls back on the parents. Like, you
Mhm.
have homeschool programs, you have churches to get involved with, you have, maybe not around here, but
Mhm.
a club, YMCA or Boys and Girls Club. But there's ways to get your kids involved.
Mhm.
Even, I think our public schools here, I think you can actually be homeschooled and play in
Yes,
the sports program.
you can.
So a lot of it falls on the parents, but I've seen kids kicked out, or not kicked out of school, but I'm pulling my kid out of school. Why? Well, they're having, the teacher this or behavior issues.
Mhm.
But then you see the kid like, well, aren't you in school? No, I'm homeschooled now. Well, then why are you,
Mhm.
but they get far, because the parents really never get involved. It's just,
Right.
it's an easy way out.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear all the nonsense from the school, so they just put, their homeschooler kids, and I guess during 2020, we had a lot of the issues where, well, everybody was on the computer doing homeschooling.
Mhm.
And some people stuck with that after the fact. But again, you're putting your kid in a room with a computer and you're not paying attention. Again, it's
Yeah.
parental involvement is key.
Right.
Am I right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
I think so.
definitely. And having the discipline to make your kid do the hard things that they don't want to do.
Right.
My kids never wake up and go, "Oh, hey mom, can I do my school now?"
Right.
It's not happened in Alyssa's finishing up 7th grade. It's not happened in the 7 years that I've been schooling, and I don't remember doing that myself. So a lot of times when the parents will pull their kids out of school because of behavior issues specifically, and then try to homeschool them, if the kid doesn't want to do it, the parent just goes, okay, fine,
Right.
don't do it. That's not going to work, and that's where homeschooling will, a lot of times, the kid will fall through the crack because the parent's not involved, like you said,
Right.
parental involvement. They're not pushing that and making the kids do things. I mean,
Hey, here's the deal. Like, if parents actually, I say parents, like all parents, and it's not.
Mhm.
But there are some parents that think their kids are just angels.
Oh yeah.
But try homeschooling your kids for a few months and see
Yeah.
how angelic your children
Yeah,
really are.
exactly. When you're
So
with
it's
them
not an easy
24/7.
task.
Mhm.
It's people think homeschoolers, they sit around in their pajamas all day and they watch TV
Uh-huh.
and they have
Yeah.
a big 5-course breakfast that they they went and picked the eggs themselves and milked the cow and made cheese and it's
Yeah.
not how it works.
Yeah.
I don't think.
No.
At least not my kids. We don't have chickens or cows, but
No, it's not. Most
and
of
there
the
may be
times.
some of that.
Most of the
But-
times we have eggs. Now we do have chickens, so we get our own. We get our own eggs, and I make my own bread now, so we have
Okay.
eggs and we have toast.
Oh, great! So that was a bad illustration.
But eggs and toast for breakfast, cereal. I make my own pancake mix as well from the grains that I grind
Right.
to make bread. So
Right.
yeah, but it's simple
But
breakfast.
those are hobbies that you do too, though.
Yeah,
those are fun
I
things you
enjoy
do.
it.
Those are hobbies. But it's not like across the board for all homeschoolers,
Right.
obviously.
No,
and even if it was,
definitely
it's not a bad thing. It's not
Yeah.
a bad thing. So you homeschool, that's cool.
Mhm.
We talked about your marriage to Robert, and I like Robert. He's a very smart person.
Pretty cool guy.
He's a pretty cool guy.
Yes, Robert's a thinker.
Mhm.
He thinks very deeply, and yeah, he'll tell you. He was actually telling Alyssa something the other night and said, if someone asks me for something or to do something and I have to have a decision right now, the answer is going to be no. Because I have to have time to think about it. He's got to think about it. He's going to process it. He'll research something to death, which is awesome. He really wants to know. He's a mechanic. He's a very good mechanic, and one of his specialties in that is troubleshooting. So he's very good at what he does because he thinks deep and he researches. So
good.
Yeah, he's really
he
good.
helps you guys go to church here, different church than ours locally, but he helps out. They have like a kids or a teen program. He helps with that. You actually teach kids or teen girls Sunday school. You told me.
Yep, I do.
Awesome. So how do you? And we talked about that because you had mentioned it's not like a really big class, but it almost like you almost said it was like well, it's not really a real big class, but I tried to let you realize too that it's okay. You don't have to have 100 kids to make an impression. And if it's just a couple, 2, 3, 5, 10, that's the hard thing about being a pastor in a small church, because I'll come in here sometimes and we have a few people, like a Wednesday or a Sunday night, it's just a few people, but I have to give it my 100% best, just like I would on a Sunday morning, or if I was asked to speak down the church or down the street at another church. It's just the fact that God knows who's going to be there at that day and that time, and He knows who's not going to be there, and so what you have does matter. So that's cool that you do that. So that's a volunteer effort. What other things do you volunteer doing in the community? You do most of it through your church, I assume.
Yep. Most of it would be through the church. Whatever activities come up that we can help with. Robert helps with the youth activity on Thursday nights. I helped up until Elijah was up until he was trying to crawl, so about a year old, and then it was pretty obvious that I wasn't able to do much because it was either me watch Elijah or someone else watch Elijah, and then that other person can't do anything. So it was kind of a trade-off. All right, am I gonna help, or are they gonna help? We decided at that time that it was best for me to stay home with the kids, and there was actually an older couple that come now, and they have a young boy that is 7, and him and Carson are really great friends. So he actually comes and hangs out at the house with Carson so that him and her can go and they can focus on the teenagers on Thursday nights helping, and they're very involved with that as well. So my ministry at this time with that teen group is more towards Robert, freeing him up to help, and towards the other couple, freeing them up to be able to help.
So looking at Robert's skill of pinpointing things and research, and then you guys having your third child, and then you realize, this one's different in some ways. So tell us all of a sudden, like, I'm assuming Robert probably had some of that input as well. He noticed some things, so how do you all of a sudden know that your child is different?
I was actually the one that noticed everything.
And you're home all the time. You see that.
Yes, and I brought those things up, and at first Robert was like, no, he's, he'll get there. He'll get there at his own stage. Remember, Carson was, later talking and different things, so he'll get there, and then progressively started noticing some more things, and then noticing that there weren't things that there should have been happening, and so he agreed, and we took him to go do some testing. They did an autism testing. That was my first suspicion, and so he was diagnosed with autism in August of 2023, and then because of certain things, they asked could they do a blood test for a genetics test, because there were some things that they were seeing that they were wondering about. And so we gave permission to do the blood test, and it came back in October that he also has Fragile X syndrome. So when they said that, I started, just poring over, not necessarily books, because everything's on the phone now, but website after website, everything I could find on Fragile X, and researching a lot
Now,
about that, so.
we don't bring up names, but are there other people in the community that have that as well? Is that something
Yes,
that's...
there are a few. We did not really realize and make the connection that, oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's what I was
so-and-so
thinking.
has,
Oh.
yes. So, yeah.
I almost wonder if it's an environment thing. I don't know. Now,
Probably,
before we go further, let me say this.
yeah.
Neither one of us are experts in
Right.
mental health, psychology, psychiatry.
Genetics,
No,
none of
we're
that
having a
stuff, no.
conversation.
No.
So make sure we understand that.
Yeah.
But I wonder could it be an environmental type thing?
I don't think it is. It is genetic.
Okay.
So we actually were able to figure out the way the genetics work. It's a
Okay.
lot to get into, but it would come from, if the son has it, it comes from the mother's side of the family. So
Okay.
I have what's called a pre-mutation of it. Elijah has full mutation, Fragile X, or they
Oh, wow.
abbreviate it FMFX.
Now, what makes that unique? Like, what does that mean? He's an X-Man. I'm just kidding.
yeah.
But what does
Yeah.
it mean, though? What does that mean?
So, Fragile X is most commonly presented with or seen with things like learning disabilities,
Okay.
very delayed potty training. Some never learned to potty train. Speech, either very delayed speech or fully speech impaired, like completely nonverbal.
Okay.
Elijah is very vocal, as
Okay.
you know, but he is still considered nonverbal.
Okay.
He has an AAC device, which is an augmentative alternative communication device. It's a tablet. He presses the buttons to tell us what he wants to communicate. He's learned some signs, so he communicates a few different ways. He is learning to talk. It has been very slow coming, but here the last couple of weeks, seems like he's really trying to actually form some words. So that's really
Wow.
encouraging. He's been in, August will be 2 years that he's actually been in speech therapy.
Okay.
Twice a week.
Now, the
for 2 years.
autism part of that, how does the autism play out? Like, how can you tell if there's autism?
So Fragile X is actually the number one. There are different things that can cause autism, that can trigger autism, and
Okay.
Fragile X is actually the number one genetic cause of it.
Okay.
So his autism is not like trauma triggered autism or environmental autism or anything, whatever other types there are. It is actually a genetic autism, and so that's something that he will never, and the Fragile X as well, because it's genetic, it's in his DNA, in his genes, it's something that he will never be able to treat or overcome.
Okay.
Now he can learn to, like, he's in therapy, he's in speech therapy, he's in occupational therapy, he's just started that about 2 months ago. So he can learn to, progress and learn just like any kid, but for Elijah, he'll have a lot of hurdles to cross with learning and possibly a lot of delays, a lot of struggles. He will be 4 in 2 weeks, and he is about a 2-year-old mentality as far as his expressive language. He understands crazy. I mean, his understanding is about a 4 or 5-year-old's understanding, but expressing that and actually being able to get everything out that is in his head, that's going on in his mind, is where he struggles. So
what's interesting though, because you are a parent though, that I know it bothers you inside, but I know that you're a parent that, knowing you and Robert, you're ones that take on something like that and you kind of roll with it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
You're very family oriented.
yeah,
And so it looks like God gave him the right parents to deal with something like this. And I know it gets tough. I know that
yeah.
as well. I do have a picture of Elijah up here. I can move the screen. And this is one of the reasons I was going to bring you on today as well. One, because you're just a regular person in the community. You're not famous. You've never done anything like
no.
crazy or weird. But that's how a community is made up, of just regular people,
Yeah.
And we don't have to be something extraordinary or special. So you're regular, and you're inspirational, and you're positive, and you're a good role model, so I brought you on for that. But also, I heard recently there was something special that was done for Elijah, and why don't you tell us about what this picture represents and what it means and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so when Elijah was diagnosed with autism, I started looking up just ways that we can help him. What can we do to help him? And one of the things that popped up on Google was autism assistance dog.
Oh.
And at first I'm like, no dogs.
Scare the chickens.
Yeah. So, well, Carson, our oldest son, is also terrified of dogs.
Really?
Um,
See, we got
not-
something in
we're
common.
not sure.
I'm shaking right now.
we're not sure why. He's never been bitten. He's never been, injured by a dog. He's been terrified of dogs since the beginning. So that was like, no, that's out of the question. Then we got Elijah's Fragile X diagnosis, and I believe it was about in March, I started looking into it again, just really in depth, a lot of research. How can these assistance dogs help with autism? What specific tasks can they do? Because with the autism and the Fragile X, there are certain things, like he gets really overwhelmed. He needs what's called deep pressure therapy occasionally, where he craves pressure on his body, or for him, it's on his face. And the way he meets that need is he'll press his face into the side of our cheek as hard as he can. And it's painful, it hurts us. But for him, that need is not met yet. And so he also gives really, really tight hugs. I already have neck problems, so it doesn't help when he does that. And my concern is that as he gets older, because he's already very tall for his age, he's only about 36 pounds at about 4 years old, but he's a big boy. My family is all over 6 feet tall, or right at 6 feet. So there's a chance, he's built very much like them, there's a chance he'll be tall and strong as he gets older. He won't necessarily know his own strength. A lot of the understanding is not there. So my concern was that as he's trying to meet that pressure need, that he would injure someone, mainly myself and my mother-in-law, because she watches him a lot for us. With a dog, the dogs can be trained to lay across his lap, or to allow him to basically rub up and down the dog's body to calm that pressure need. That it's a sensory need that he's trying to meet, and he doesn't know what to do with it. And I was like, deep pressure, okay, that's exactly what he's doing. When I read about this, that's one way the dogs can help. He's trying to get deep pressure therapy, and his therapist confirmed that. Elijah also elopes, means he sees something he wants and he just runs for it. And he has no understanding, no regard for anything that's around him that could be a danger to him. And the dogs can be trained to almost like, to protect them, almost like a guard dog, to kind of herd them back, or to stay with a child if he disappears, and until we can get to him. So there were just several ways that I was totally unaware that the dog could actually be a help to Elijah. And the more he has, the stronger his meltdowns, and the more severe his meltdowns have become, and the more often that he's getting the meltdowns, it's like, okay, maybe it's time to go ahead and start this process before he's 6, 7, 8 years old and really needs it, because the process of getting a service dog can be up to 2 years. By the time you raise the funds, by the time the dog is trained. So in April, we started the process of looking into a trainer, or a breeder first, because you have to find the dog, and then someone to train it, looking into raising the funds, and yeah.
Crazy.
So
So you had a teacher at QI Roberts that was willing, or heard about this, and what happened with that?
Yeah, so Amanda Lamb, she heard about this, and I actually met her through a friend at church, and she teaches an AVID class at QI Roberts, and my understanding, if I remember it all correct, is that it's a 7th grade class, and all of the students that go through QI come through her class at some point in time.
Okay.
And so she took it and she ran with it. Their class, they learn to give back to the community and give to others. They have like a store at the school where they keep it stocked with snacks, and all of their money goes back into their school. So she wanted to teach them to do something for the benefit of someone else where they did not benefit from it. And so she actually organized an acceptance for autism 5K walk run and a family fun day
Awesome.
this past month, and they were able to donate the fundraiser. Were able to donate $7,000
Wow.
towards this dog, and this is the day after the fundraiser. Actually, was when we were matched with Red. This is going to be Elijah's service dog,
Cool.
and we actually get to bring Red home on July the 3rd, and then training will start. She's already the breeder's doing basic training with him now, obedience training, and that will continue through the middle of July, and then July 21st or somewhere in there, I believe is when training actually starts for service dog training. It'll be a 6-month program, but the dog will be with us until then. So as a puppy, Red is almost 10 weeks. He'll be 10 weeks on Monday, and as a puppy, the goal is that he will hopefully naturally bond with Elijah, and that some of those things that Elijah may need in the future, that we won't have to teach them, because as a puppy, that natural bond will be there. He will already know Elijah. Elijah may develop seizures. It is very common with boys that have Fragile X to develop seizures. So Red will be trained to, at some point, if that is needed, if those develop, Red will be trained to as a seizure alert dog as well.
Wow.
So yeah,
That's pretty impressive.
It's pretty cool. We've learned a lot. So much.
I hate that you get them the day before July 4th, though.
I know.
That's when all the fireworks are going
I
off.
know.
That poor little dog
Yeah.
around
We're
here.
not gonna take him. Like, our family's gonna go to the parade, but Robert and Elijah and Red, because Elijah doesn't like the fire trucks and all that either
Okay.
at the parade. The noise scares him, so
Okay.
they're gonna hang out at our church down the road.
Okay. That's
During
cool.
the parade. So
Good.
yeah.
Well, that is really neat. I didn't know all those. I didn't know all that. That was really informative.
Yeah.
The
It's-
pressure, and it reminds me of, in fact, I read this book recently, Of Mice and Men. Have you ever read that book?
I have heard of it, but I have not read it.
So read it.
Okay.
Don't get panicked, but that's what happened. It sounds like that's what the boy or the man
Okay.
in that book had.
Interesting.
And, yeah, just read it. And I don't want to tell you everything about it, but and
Yeah.
there is some language in
Spoiler.
there for the homeschool moms may not like, so just to give
Okay.
you a heads up. But it
Okay.
is an old book, but it is
Okay.
interesting. But that actually makes sense to me now, like, because when I read that book a few weeks ago or a couple months ago, and then you tell me this, I'm like, that sounds a lot like maybe that's in that story. So,
Yeah.
interesting.
So Elijah also, with his meltdowns, one of the ways that we're hoping that the dog will help is intervening and calming. There are dogs, golden retrievers are very good at sensing when someone is going to have like a panic attack or is
Okay.
struggling with anxiety. And Elijah, especially in places like we go to Sam's pretty much weekly for our grocery trip, and the noise is just, it's so much for him, and it's so busy, but he won't wear earmuffs. I can't get him to keep the earmuffs on. So the goal is that the dog will actually go with us to Sam's, and our trainer will accompany us there and will help to teach Elijah to focus on the dog instead of everything going on around him. And Red will be trained to try and keep Elijah's attention on him and kind of offset that anxiety and the
So the
panic.
trainer, are you paying the trainer, or does an organization pay the trainer, or how does that work?
So yes, we actually had to pay for Red,
Okay.
and we had to pay for the obedience training that he's doing now, and we will be paying for the service dog training that will actually be due the middle of July.
Okay.
So
Interesting. Well, that's exciting. So anything else you want to mention while you're on here?
we've done the fundraising. We have a little bit more, a couple more pricey things that are needed for Red. So we will be doing another smoked chicken dinner. We did one back in
Okay.
the end of May to raise some funds to actually purchase Red.
We just left out of town and we didn't get one, so we'll
Right.
get one next time.
Yes. We're planning to do that
Definitely do it
towards
next time.
the end of July, possibly the 1st of August. So
Okay.
we'll be giving a heads up there.
All right.
To purchase some more of the big items. One thing that we need is a crash tested kennel, not just a typical kennel that you can buy from Walmart or Bass Pro Shops, but it's a crash tested, and these run about $750.
Now why, is that going in your vehicle?
Yes, it'll be going, because Red will go everywhere with us.
Right.
So Elijah's therapies are in Gainesville, so we drive to Gainesville twice a week and back. And then any of our driving around, it will stay in the vehicle. And it's actually, it's tested for safety during a crash. The company will actually replace it, just like they would replace a car seat that is in a crash, because they're that,
special.
yeah, that's special. So it's not just a cheap thing. And then a GPS tracker to go on Red's collar, because Red will be trained to stay with Elijah. So if Elijah disappears, we will be able to track them with an app on our phone. And the GPS tracker it's $200 as well. So it's, not your typical pet supplies and pet things that you would need. These are a little more special, specifically for Red and the service that he will be doing. So yeah, we'll be doing a little more fundraising for that.
Awesome, very good.
Yeah.
So at the end of the interviews, I usually get, and you don't have to, but I always give them an option to ask me anything. If you have anything you need to ask me. Our friends or families.
I can't think of anything. Yeah.
Oh, good. Good. I was hoping you were going to ask my weight or nothing like that. So good.
No.
Good. I'll get away on this one.
How do you like being a grandpa?
Oh boy. See, now you're bringing the weight question on, because I'm a big fat grandpa. I was kidding. No, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Unfortunately, our grandson does not live close to us. But while we were at my third daughter's wedding, my second daughter to get married, but she's our third daughter. She got married in Vegas, and I know everybody always says, "Oh, you're in Sin City," and I get so frustrated with that, because it actually gets a little irritating.
That's what it's known for, but it's
I
not
know,
just.
but
that's not the only thing.
When you go to Las Vegas, you don't have to gamble, you don't have to drink, you don't have to partake in, and when you come back, you can talk about what happened in Vegas. I mean, not everything has to stay there.
Yeah.
But my daughter got married in Vegas. That's where her fiance's from. That's where he was born. That's where he goes to church. And there's real people in Vegas, that do real things. They have jobs, and so there's doctors and lawyers and all. Anyway, so we went to Vegas and spent about a week there. We got to go to Death Valley, and we got to go to Grand Canyon. You didn't ask all that.
I saw the pictures.
But we didn't have all that fun.
Awesome.
But anyway, but more important than all that, we got to see little Cyrus, and we got to have him for a couple days. He stayed in the Airbnb with us a night, I think, and then of course we got to see him different times. So yeah, it was nice to see him. But I hate not being with him all the time, because he is. Now I'm doing something. I don't know if I've already mentioned this before, but I will read kids' books and record it for him, and I put him on like a private YouTube, and then he can watch. Papa J is my name. He can watch Papa J reading his,
special.
The Fire Cat book or whatever. So I figured he don't get to see me all the time. I want him to know my voice and know my personality, and he can at least watch me read him books. So when he gets older, I bought him some books. I'm a big book guy, so I bought some books the other day when we were traveling to Vegas at a bookstore, and right now he just he enjoys looking at all the colors and stuff. Yeah. But he's grown up. I guess he'll be 5 months in a couple weeks, and so yeah. And he's got lots of hair that's untamable.
He's awesome hair.
It's all over the place.
That's adorable.
So he's got as much hair in his head as I have on my back. So I'm just kidding. I always joke about that. But anyway, thank you for asking. Yeah, he's a lot of fun. And then I was asking the other day, I have a friend who needs some baby clothes, and I asked my daughter, I said, "What are you gonna do with Cyrus?" And she's like, "Well, we'll hold on to him for the next kid." I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute now. We already talked about the next one." So I'm like, "Oh no." And then of course Brianna's married now, and who knows, what that future holds. But anyway, it's fun being a grandpa, though. I enjoy it. So I enjoy it. Nice. Well, I'm glad you got to come on today.
Thank you for having me.
We have more interviews scheduled. We had some people back out this week, and but I'm glad you came on last minute, and we got to talk about that. I'm hoping all the money, and it will, but all the money will be raised for Elijah and his needs. And I actually haven't seen him in a while, but I'll tell you, his blue eyes are just so electric.
So
is he blonde hair? Is he blonde hair?
Yes, that's a funny thing. So Alyssa has brown hair and brown eyes. Huh. Carson has red hair and green eyes.
Really?
And when I was pregnant with Elijah, I said, wouldn't it be the funniest thing if we have a blonde hair, blue-eyed baby, and then we have all the hair colors and all the eye colors, and sure enough, blonde hair, blue-eyed from day one.
Every time I
And it
see
has
him,
not
like
changed.
his eyes just grab your attention. They're like so. He's got big eyes and they're just so bright blue. I kept looking at the picture. I was like,
Yep.
man, his eyes are so perfect. It's so crazy.
One of the things with the Fragile X is that they are very, typically extremely happy people, like overly happy and excited people until they have a meltdown.
Really?
But yeah,
I know
that is a typical Fragile X disposition. So,
And as we discussed earlier, we are not experts in this field.
right.
We're asking questions and talking about what we know. So if somebody hears something, I want them to, run with it and say, "Oh no, I heard on this." It's not official. It's just a conversation.
Yeah.
So, all right, Amanda, thank you. I appreciate your family. Appreciate you. And I guess you're going to the chiropractor now, huh?
Yes.
All right, well, enjoy that. I love that. The chiropractor you go to, I love him. He really cracks me up.
Good one.
Okay, that was a really bad joke. He is a good guy though. All right, thank you, Amanda.
Great.
Have